Hello, and welcome to another episode of Art Portals. Today we're going to talk a little bit about art and anxiety.
Yeah. Why is it that so many artists, especially young artists, experience so much anxiety when they're just starting out within their art practice? How do you feel, Rex?
It's a tough one. I think anxiety takes many forms, and it's a little bit different for everyone. But for me, I think it just makes me hide away from the world, and I don't share my art as much as maybe I should.
Yeah, exactly. It's also like this level of self-doubt that you have within you and your uncertainty to create something that you feel is just needs time or it needs work. So really what's important is to identify what's giving you anxiety and work through it so that you have a less higher expectation of yourself when you are creating, because the process of creation should mostly embrace your failure within that. And once you get to that point, then it's a little easier to, when you do feel anxious, like, oh, it's that feeling again, and what am I going to do to work on it, right?
Yeah, and rather than avoiding the feeling, you gotta go through it. You gotta show up anyways, and just keep goofing. And even though there's shitty feelings going on inside of you, just put that aside. Keep working hard.
Yeah, easier said than done, right?
Clock in, yeah. No, absolutely. It's easier said than done, but I think that there's a wall you have to hit, and then once you break through it, you feel a sense of accomplishment, but it is very difficult.
Yeah, especially when I was a younger artist, I used to experience an insane amount of anxiety, and that was just taking place in just negative thoughts and constantly being down on myself and overthinking things instead of just like embracing the fluidity of the process. And this book that really helped me through that was called Art and Fear, and it's by David Bales. And I wanted to read a big part of this quote that I really enjoy. Maybe we can start out with the first half of the quote, and then towards the end we can work our way through it, and let's have a conversation about it. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Cool? Okay. So, your desire to make art, beautiful or meaningful or emotive art, is integral to the sense of who you are. Life and art, once entwined, can quickly become inseparable. At age 90, Frank Lloyd Wright was still designing, Imogen Cunningham still photographing, Stravinsky still composing, Picasso still painting. But if making art gives substance to your sense of self, the corresponding fear is that you're not up to the task, that you can't do it, or can't do it well, or can't do it again, or that you're not a real artist or not a good artist, or have no talent or have nothing to say. The line between the artist and his or her work is a fine one at best, and for the artist it feels quite naturally like there is no such line. Making art can feel dangerous and revealing. Making art is dangerous and revealing. Making art precipitates self-doubts, stirring deep waters that lay between what you know you should be and what you fear you might be. For many people, that alone is enough to prevent their ever getting started at all. And for those who do, trouble isn't long in coming. Doubts, in fact, soon rise in swarms.
It's deep.
Deep stuff. Yeah. So I really like to think about just the context of how doubt comes up while you're creating. And it's like, yes, we want to be this artist, but I think when we're first learning our tools, we're first trying to figure out how to find our voice, it's really difficult to get through those doubts and those fears and that high expectation that we have on ourselves. And I think a lot of that also just comes from this outside image of what it means to embody an artist. It's less about like the process of creation and that personal moment that you have with what you're doing. It's more like, oh, well, in order to pay my bills and be a happy person, I have to meet X, Y, and Z. And if I'm not good by this year, then it's gonna suck. And if I don't go to school and get this type of degree, then I'm not gonna make these, expectations. And that's exactly what it is. It's all these expectations that you're putting on yourself because you have this preconceived notion of what it means to be an artist. So maybe we just have to dismantle that idea of what it means to become an artist. What do you think? How would you define what it means to be an artist to everyone?
I think everyone's an artist. It isn't really a clearly defined thing, but something I liked about this quote is that it talks a little bit about how when you tie your sense of self to being an artist, it dictates how you feel, how your performance in the studio dictates how you feel. And I think there's a necessary amount of disconnecting yourself from your art and just thinking of it as showing up to work, you know? Just because you're a laborer, you're a construction worker, doesn't mean that you take your work home with you, you know? So I think it's good to disconnect that sense of happiness or joy that's only through your art, and finding other ways to express yourself as well. I think it's really helpful when you're struggling, if you're feeling a sense of doubt with yourself, or you're showing up to the studio and you're going through the motions, then, you know, take a lap, go mini golfing, you know, go do something that makes you happy in other ways.
Yeah, I think that taking a break from it is also really important when you're first kind of getting to know yourself and just the way your mind and body experience life as you are becoming an artist. And taking some time away from it is super important. I think a lot of us want to embody just this own perception again of like the successful artist, and then we're forcing ourselves to do all these things, and when it doesn't work out as easy as we expected, we beat ourselves up. And that's where a lot of like procrastination comes from, and again that anxiety and the doubt. So it's like, okay, there's this really harsh, strict parent that you're creating for yourself. And why do you have to be that form and version of yourself just to feel successful within your art process and to feel like you actually got somewhere?
Yeah, I think that conquering that fear is what makes a great artist. And even though, yes, you have to be your own disappointed parent, you have to be your own marketing agent and all that, but if you really love doing it, it's going to feel like it doesn't work. It's going to feel like you're just being yourself.
Exactly. Because when you're in a state of fear, you think that everything's going to go wrong, that everything's against you. And even when there's this one thing that brings you so much joy, it's like you can't even like sit down and settle that and embrace that joy. It's like, oh, well, if I don't do it this way and it doesn't work the way I expected, then that ruins my whole process. And then I'm not such a good artist. Just like the quote said, it's like I'm not up to the task. And it's just like almost giving this hierarchy of attention to all these negative thoughts that you're having. But in a way, you can't just shut them down. You have to kind of give them that intention because they're there for a reason. And like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but sometimes when I'm having like a really difficult day and I'm trying to kind of stay productive, but my mind just keeps going back to like maybe this one bill that I need to pay that, sucks. It came out from under me, or, this one interaction I had with a person, and my mind keeps going back to that, but I keep avoiding that. And it's like, wait, my mind is going back to that because it wants me to process that emotion. It wants me to process that feeling. And I think that's essentially what our anxiety does to us. And so maybe if we are able to identify where that anxiety is coming from, it's going to be easier to work through it as we're going into the studio.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a big mystery, and it's not a bad thing. Anxiety is actually very beneficial. It'll help you if you use it as a fuel for your work. I think that there's a number of positives that come from anxiety, and I've heard other much smarter people talk about this, but I think it's also a survival instinct where if you've always got your head on a swivel, it's helpful. It'll keep you surviving for longer. If you're anxious when you're camping, maybe you should be, and maybe there's something out there in the night that wants to eat you. And so it's all coming from somewhere. So if you can isolate where those feelings are coming from, yeah, it absolutely is helpful. It'll help you conquer that lion or whatever's lurking in the shadows of your brain.
Yeah. It's easier when you have an outside perspective of that, but while it's happening in the moment, sometimes it's so hard to get and step away from that because it's like your brain is like circling into that cycle. Like one of my first really bad anxiety experiences while creating art was when I was trying to learn the figure. And when I was figure drawing, I felt like this really intense energy all the time because it's like you get 15 to 20 minutes to draw what's in front of you, and the way you start the drawing is like so important into how the drawing's gonna end. And it's like you gotta get that gesture right and you gotta get the proportions right, and if one thing is bigger then you spend all your time on one thing. And it was like my mind was racing and I couldn't get it to really shut down and calm itself. And then it was like recognizing and stepping away from that and realizing, hey, like, actually, this is me giving all of my attention to all of the negative things that I'm doing. And like, if I make a mistake, it's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, that's it. You know, it doesn't have to be this, oh, well, you did this because of this, so next time you need to do this. It's like, no, I made a mistake, and that's okay. Like, actually, it's going to help me be better and be more improvisational when it comes to that next drawing and that next step that I do. But when I respond to every single negative and anxious thought that I have, it's having a front seat, and it's allowing, the thoughts are just controlling me instead of me like learning to take control of them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's something there that you need to unravel within yourself, and I think that's why back in school all the bullies, they'd pick on a kid, and the kid that reacts the hardest is the kid that gets bullied the most. And I think when people are saying hurtful things about you, it affects you the most when it's things you're already insecure about or things you already are thinking about yourself. And so when you're going into the studio, or you're even in a critique and people are talking to you about your work, things are going to sting more when they say things that you've already been dwelling on. And so it's really important to empty out all that baggage, and try your best to work on yourself outside of your art process, so that when it comes time to paint or draw, you don't have a cup that's already full. You also have things you can be learning. You're not spilling out all of your thoughts. You're in a very eloquent way describing what you want to describe, or you're expressing what you want to express. Unless your work is about darkness, that's okay too. But I do think that there's a certain amount of finesse that needs to be done in order to successfully express yourself, even if you're expressing negative thoughts. You have to learn to conquer your positive thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think like if you're trying to make art your career, that is the initial goal, is making sure that you have kind of control over those instances of intense anxiety. But if you're somebody like me, I've suffered from anxiety attacks and panic attacks in the past, and I felt like creating art was one way to kind of hone down on them and really understand myself through the process. So it was almost like this healing journey. And like, yeah, like art is in its own way healing, but maybe not for everyone. And some artists, they don't want to heal through that. They just want to create badass things and maybe escape a bit from the darkness of their life, because life can be really difficult sometimes. And so it's good to be able to distinguish between, you know, what type of art you're trying to create, and what is your intention with the experience you have when you're going into creating something, right? Is your intention to just finish so that you have this certain thing because you follow this artist and you're really inspired by their work and you want it to look and replicate that? Or is it just, hey, I'm just trying to show up for myself today because I keep focusing on all these terrible things that are happening to me and it's bringing me down, and I just want to show up for myself. And if that's your intention, then it's a work in progress, you know?
Yeah, life is tough enough as it is. Sometimes you just got to show up and be alive, and that's enough for the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And journaling is super helpful too. So you can empty out all those thoughts, and then you're clean, you're ready to go for a successful finished work.
I think when it comes to success, it's also like defining what success means to you. And so when you get to that point where you're starting to kind of figure yourself out and you recognize, hey, like, yeah, I'm anxious, but I feel like I'm always going to be anxious, so it's not something that I can turn away from. But if I just show up and create something, that's enough for me. I'm successful. I don't need to make a profit off of this. I don't need for people to self-validate what I'm doing. I'm just here for myself. And when it comes to anxiety, it's like those little wins are so important. You have to really like sit down and embrace those little wins, you know? Because even if you have a really difficult day and you have a lot of failures, you showed up and you still tried. And that's enough, you know?
Absolutely. And sometimes you just got to fake it till you make it. A lot of people won't know you're anxious till you tell them you're anxious. And then even then, they'll look at you differently because you said that. And so it's sometimes just putting on your bravest face and getting out there anyways, and putting up the good fight, even when you feel like you can't go on. But you can.
Yeah.
You can do more than you think you can.
Yeah, we're warriors in our own weird way, and I think, like you were saying earlier, it's if you're anxious, it's because there's something within you that you're not fully processing, and it's like that fight or flight mode, really, that we
Yeah.
have to, that keeps us on our feet, right? And I think that's also this human thing that we all have, and it's this level of wanting to control every aspect of our lives, which is just like the ego in a weird way. And there's good things about the ego, of course, but I think it can also hinder our process. And so when we're in a space of major anxiety and all these things are out of our control, sometimes it's because there's so much out of our control, especially with art, because you can't really tell how things are going to turn out. You just have to try and figure things out and kind of embrace that uncertainty until you get to that point. And when you do, then you relinquish that control and you start to become this sort of unified person with your anxiety.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes you just got to go through it. You have to embrace the fact that things are always going to be crazy, and you're always going to have some degree of anxiety. So you might as well sit with it, face it, and see how bad it can be. And I think that's a great way to go about it. Because if you go through the worst of it, you can always reflect on it and be like, well, I've been through worse. And there's always going to be ups and downs in life, but at least you have art. At least you have some way to express these crazy feelings that you have, and it's something I'm so grateful to have access to. Is just art supplies, and I have my mind, my hands. I have a physical ability to make the art. So if I can find time to slow down and remind myself of all the things I have gratitude for, I think it makes all of those wild running thoughts slow down, and I can pick and choose which ones I identify with and leave the other ones at the door, and wipe my feet off, step into a new environment, and just get to work and try not to make excuses, because like you said, it is a form of procrastination, and it's a form of narcissism. It's like, oh well, I'm never good enough, I'm never this, me. And maybe it's not about you. Maybe you need to express something greater than yourself. And maybe you need to reveal parts of yourself to other people so they have permission to be themselves.
Yeah, I like what you said about slowing down, because that's essentially what it is. It's like you're self-identifying so much with every little thing that it's preventing you from just being present with the moment and with the creation of the moment. And so, like, I'm actually curious, have you ever experienced any, like, weird anxiety when you first started creating art? And can you talk about it?
Yeah, of course. I think I've always been insecure about my abilities, or until recently, I think just I feel like I'm too weird, like I make art that's too dark to be acceptable, and I think it's taken a good amount of breaking out of my shell in order to embrace the fact that yes, I make weird things, yes, I make things that are dark, but I find my community. I find other people that feel in a way that it resonates with them. And to me that's more than enough. I'm not making things for them, but the fact that other people enjoy it means a lot to me, and it's nice to have that validation. Not that I need it, but it does help kind of soothe that sense of everything's on fire, and I think that just by having a community, by having close friends, artists or not, that accept me regardless of what I make, I think it reminds me that I'm enough. I don't have to continue making things in order to have a sense of self, but definitely it's not always a winning battle. Anxiety is something that we all go through, but it doesn't feel like me anymore. I think that there's been definite times in my life where like my art was about anxiety, but now it doesn't feel that way. To now it feels more like dancing, or it feels like a fluid flowing thing that is more mercurial, and it isn't as tied to human emotions. It's more just like kind of a noise or something. Like it feels less like I feel like describing it. It feels more like I feel like showing it and demonstrating how it feels to be me. And to me, that's enough. They're all kind of self-portraits in a way, and I've over time learned to love myself more and more.
Yeah, so do you feel like usually a lot of the anxiety comes from just like those early stages of like discovering your voice and like figuring out your art process?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the feelings of inadequacy is what it all stems from, I think. I felt like I didn't have what I needed to be a successful artist.
Yeah.
And I think as you grow and develop your craft, you realize that you've had it all along. You just didn't have the ability to see yourself in a way that's I am successful. I don't need external validation. All I need is myself and my work ethic and just continually showing up in the studio. Keep on showing up. That's all you need to do in order to get better. And that's always been my goal, is just each thing I make should be building on the last. Even if it's not objectively better, I think that I'm more informed, I'm learning, and as long as I'm still learning, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and you're consistent with yourself. That's the difference, and that's the key. It's not like you're sitting at home, you did one drawing, and you haven't done anything in the past 2 weeks, and you just keep circling back to how terrible that drawing or whatever it was. And it's not about that. Even if it is terrible, embrace that it's terrible, because there's nothing wrong with terrible things. Like, it's fun, and like you said, like, you have this weirdness about you. And when you first start figuring things out and you're trying to match a technical understanding of art with a conceptual understanding of it, you are gonna have weird, kooky, crazy things, but like that is your highest version and highest expression of yourself. And so learning to match the two is extremely essential in overcoming your anxiety, because it's not something that you have to self-identify with for the rest of their lives. You know, like certain people like have, you know, real disabilities and real mental illnesses that they carry with them for the rest of their lives, and it's terrible, and you know, it really is hard to process that. But at the end of the day, if you're able to create a life for yourself where you have the opportunity to show up, you have the capability to even work, even if it's for 30 minutes a day, that is such a blessing, and you can totally see yourself grow. And really the only person preventing you from getting there is yourself. It's not the anxiety, it's not what society's telling of you, it's not this victimized mentality, it's just you. And so I think that, you know, we really have like going back to the quote, it's that like self-doubt, that innate subconscious doubt that we have within ourselves, because we're psyching ourselves out when it's like, yo, you're awesome, like you're so cool, and you're such a unique individual, and everyone has something to bring to the table. Even if it means that you have to look at inspirations for a bit and get inspired by other people for a little, that's okay, you know, because like that's a whole point of, you know, art, and embracing what you like and figuring out who you are and how you match, because it's like it's not just a journey of self-love, but it's a journey of like really embracing who you are as a person, and that's beautiful, and that's essentially what we want to be bringing and inspiring artists to do here. So yeah, I think that, you know, take back your control, stop letting your crazy thoughts control you. Maybe we can also start to discuss like how to overcome some anxiety. Like, okay, for example, something that I do to also help with focus in the studio is I meditate. Like, meditation is extremely helpful. I'll try to do that once every other day or so, and I sit down for at least 15 to 20 minutes, and I'm quiet with my thoughts. I close my eyes, I control my breathing, and, you know, sometimes there's a bunch of thoughts. It's okay, give them attention. You don't have to shoo them away. Figure out what it is that's going on within you. Why is it that your brain is putting that to the front? And, you know, go from there. Figure out like what it is about you that you want to work on today. Because every day is just an opportunity for change.
And another successful tip I've received from a great professor of mine was, you don't have to say everything in every single piece of work. You don't have to reveal all of the pieces in your puzzle. You can dole them out as slowly as you want. You can say a fraction of what you think you need to say and still get your point across. So for me, that's a helpful thing to kind of relieve the pressure when I'm staring at a blank canvas, especially. It's very daunting. I'm like, where is this going to go? And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to overthink it. But if I can, partway through the painting, I'm going to destroy half of what I've done so far and just
yeah, you do that.
completely topple the castle I've built and see what I can do with the pieces that are left over. And I know that it's a stressful process, but for me, that's what makes me happy, is making mistakes and dancing with it and embracing the idea that everything is a mistake in some way. Mistakes have led you to where you are now. You're going to make more mistakes in the future, but if you can intentionally dance with those mistakes and find alternative routes to get where you want to go, you're going to be much more well equipped for later on when you get a commission and someone says, hey, this is what I want, and you already have A to Z planned out. Now it's just about breathing and staying calm and working through it. But if you're always so uptight, you're so strict, like, first I do an underpainting, and then I add a layer of just white, and then I add a layer of blue, and then I add this, that, it really gets on your nerves. And even though that's how you were taught to do it, for example, if someone taught you how to paint, they're coming at it with the best of intentions, but they made a million mistakes too. They found shortcuts that they're teaching you. And life isn't about shortcuts. Sometimes it's about learning the hard way. And just keep making those mistakes, keep finding new pathways, and keep it simple. Try to just get the essential message you're trying to get across, and don't overwhelm yourself.
Yeah.
No one's thinking about you as much as you're thinking about you.
It's very true.
So just try to take it easy, You don't want to scream at your viewer. You don't want to spook them away. You want to have a thought. You want it to be relatable. And you want it to be not spoon-fed to the viewer, but you want it to be palatable. You want it to be something that is understandable. And it doesn't have to be immediately apparent why you did it, but I think that the title could contribute to an understanding of it. So while you're working in the back of your mind, consider, what's the title of this? And am I giving clues to the viewer? Am I completing the puzzle for them? And I think that depending on what you're going for, if you want them to have an entire understanding, I think that would lead towards illustration. So you're giving a story. A through Z is already depicted. But if you want something that's more up for interpretation, I think a more vague title, something that's one word, is plenty. And then you can step back and trust your viewer. They will fill in the gaps. They'll find their own storyline to interlace with what you have in mind. So take it easy on yourself. Keep it simple. And don't say everything you have on your mind. It's overwhelming. It's too much for you. It's too much for the viewer.
Exactly. I really love that, because simplicity really is key when it comes to overcoming your anxiety. Like, even with this podcast, for example, we're not like writing each thing down. Maybe we have a couple of ideas that we're planning for the episodes, but we're just in conversation. We're in flow with each other, and that is something that I feel like, me personally, because I've struggled with pretty bad anxiety, but it's like when I am overemphasizing things that I really want to do is when I do them so poorly, because I'm psyching myself out and I'm putting myself into this, future product, and if it's not going to be like this, and it's going to be a disaster, and I might not be actively thinking about it, but I'm subconsciously feeling that. And it's like, no, like, really, I know myself. I'm confident with myself. I'm working on myself. And every single day I embrace a new Loren. And if I want to be this other person one day, then cool. Like, but I'm not, because like, that's not me. And like, I feel that it's okay to understand that, the growth is so important. And when you keep it simple, when you're just a human being, when you stop over contextualizing every little thing and trying to find underlying meanings and, oh, there's this symbolism and synchronicity and blah blah blah, it's like, no, you're just a human being experiencing life, and you want to create art, and there might be a product out of that, or there might not be a product out of that. Either way, I'm going to show up today and try my best. And there's something magical that comes from that, you know, and you are able to tap into that bank of creativity and creation. You're not like psyching yourself out because you don't feel worthy. You know, it's like, I don't know, we all have the potential to really share our own uniqueness, and that simplicity is such, it's key. It's key to everything. And I really like what you said about that.
Yeah. You're your most important asset. You walking into a room, that's more than enough. You bring yourself, and as long as you're working on yourself, you're working on your mental health. I think that's really all you need. Just continue showing up, working hard, and improving yourself in a variety of ways. And only you know what that means to you. Yeah. No one can tell you how to get where you want to go. And sometimes it's better if it's a mystery. Like if you know where you're going to go all the time, it sounds like an awfully boring life.
Exactly. And you know, it's so crazy because so much of our upbringing in Western society is this really sheltered experience. You know, you have your parents, and you go to school and you find a career and you go to college and you get married, and everything is this like structured thing. And if you step outside of that structure for a little, it's like, the world is crumbling beneath me. And it's like, yes, like it's okay. Like whatever you feel is necessary and you feel like is going to make you happy is already a preconceived notion of reality, and it's just not realistic.
Yeah.
Reality is just embracing who you are and where you're at. If you're a 40-year-old artist and you just started painting, you're not too old. You're a person going through life who wants to paint. That's it. You know, if you're, like in school and trying to figure out how to get through your classes and you're not really feeling connected to your professors, it's not because, they're all against you. It's just because you're not connecting to it, and that's it, right? So it's like, I think we, again, over-contextualize what we want from life because we have this preconceived notion of what life should be, and there's no way to tell. If every little thing in our path was defined, it would be boring. Like that's the whole thing that's exciting. When you least expect things to happen, that's when, boom, something happens. And maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a negative thing, maybe it's both. So it's just really embracing that reality.
If you feel like, everything's crumbling, maybe you could also look at it as, oh man, I have a fresh start. But at least I have my friends, at least I have my pet, or at least I have my health. At least I have the ability and the time to make things. So it's all about perspective. Because if you're feeling like everything's happening at you, then you're no longer an active participant. You're a victim. And you're no longer in the driver's seat. You're now just a passenger in this ongoing experience that's happening at you. But really, you have control. You can interact with reality in whatever way you want. And of course, culture is going to tell you how to do it. Your family is going to tell you what's good for you and how much you've changed over time. But good, you should be changing. There's no need to stay in one specific mode of thought or one location. There's so many things to explore in life and so many different people to meet and so many things you can be doing with your time. And there's no one right answer. Yeah. And go out, make all the mistakes. Put yourself in scary situations. I had a friend who told me that one of the best ways to deal with social anxiety is to walk up to a counter of a busy restaurant and say, hey, can I have a discount? And of course, they're probably going to say no, but like that could be your fear. And one of the ways to conquer your fear is by exposing yourself to it. And who knows what'll happen, but at least it's movement. And you never want to stagnate in life. You want to keep moving keep trying new things. And worst case, you're back where you started. And that's not such a bad place to be. Where you are right now is a great place. And you decide which direction you want to go in from here.
It's having a sense of bravery and excitement for the moment and just going full force, and whatever happens at me, I'm ready to take it on. And also, we're in no way like psychiatrists, we're just two artists discussing our own experiences with anxiety. And if you really do have debilitating anxiety and panic attacks, I know what that's like. I come from a family with really bad panic attacks, and there's plenty of things and resources that you can do to try and work on that, But again, we're here to just try and inspire and motivate you guys and look within yourselves to become better artists and to have a better relationship within the art practice itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think I would love to read the rest of this quote, and we can probably end it from there. Cool.
And this was David Bales from Art and Fear.
Yes. Really great book. It's like pretty much like woken me up in so much of my art process. Okay, so here goes. I'm not an artist, I'm a phony. I have nothing worth saying. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Other people are better than I am. I'm only a student, physicist, mother, whatever. I've never had a real exhibit. No one understands my work. No one likes my work. I'm no good. Yet, viewed objectively, these fears obviously have less to do with the art than they do with the artist, and even less to do with the individual artworks. After all, in making art, you bring your highest skills to bear upon the materials and ideas you most cared about. Art is a high calling. Fears are coincidental. Coincidental, sneaky, and disruptive. We might add disguising themselves variously as laziness, resistance to deadlines, irritation with materials or surroundings, distractions over the achievements of others. Indeed, anything that keeps you from giving your work your best shot. What separates artists from ex-artists is that those who challenge their fears continue, and those don't. Quit. Each step in the art-making process puts that issue to the test.
It's really nice.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Keep working. Don't give up on yourself.
Yes, you got this. Please give us a follow. We are Art Portals Podcast. You can find us on Instagram. We also have a YouTube. You can subscribe. And if you listen to Spotify, we're also on Spotify.
Yeah, check us out.
Yay,
Thanks,
bye.
guys. Bye.